Welcome to another go round of Thursdays with Niko. I don't think you don't have a cup of coffee with you right now, considering it's more like a late lunch with Niko this go round, do you?
No, John, I do not. I actually have a little, I don't know how you'd call it, an adult beverage.
There you go. Adult
With me
beverage
here
works.
today.
That's good. That'll work.
Yep,
There
yep,
you
yeah.
go.
I mean, it's lunch, but it is Veterans Day, and yeah, so I am treating myself to a little lunch adult drink.
As you should. So let's get into a majority of our conversation this go round will be with what happened on decision day and kind of setting up the playoffs a little bit. And do you want to start with the oopsie from Pro, or do you want to kind of build into it with the handball that happened with Justin Glad? Do you want to get to that first, or do you want to work our way to it?
We could start there just because I mean it's so ironic to hear Sporting Kansas City complain about refing.
And it's you look at the play, you look at the replay. Justin Glad sticks out his hand, and the trickle down effect that this no call and then no reversal on VAR, which seemed to be clear and obvious, all of the trickle down effects that were had by this particular moment. Once again, you've got Pro coming out and saying, "Oops, our bad." But once again, Pro sits there, and it's a situation where the repercussions of it and the knock-on effects are absolutely huge, and it also speaks to what we're constantly seeing this year, or not necessarily constantly, but it keeps cropping up, where you're having issues with Pro and you're having issues specifically with the implementation of VAR, when not to, overriding, overruling, and all of the knock-on effects.
Oh my goodness, you're talking about a whole other handball. I was talking about the one in Sporting Kansas City that they were complaining about.
That too.
So
Well, we'll get to that one next.
all right, yeah, there were a few of those, and you're right. I mean, to not give you the exact same answer you've probably heard all week. I mean, the thing with VAR is that you got two types of people. Some of us who can't stand it and just want it to be the way it always been and not take certain essence from the game, that you can actually celebrate a goal with your teammates and not have to wait to the screen to figure out if you should or not. And those who think it's fixing the game and it's making it better. And yes, certain calls have gotten reversed and have probably put teams through that should have been through, and gave teams 3 points where they should have gotten them, or whatever the case may be. But VAR is not perfect, and now to some of us that have never enjoyed it or have been behind it, you just say, okay, so now you're losing both aspects of the game. You're forgetting about that essence and that natural moments that happen when goals happen, and then or or when mistakes happen, with handballs and offsides, and then you're also getting them wrong, and you're also not knowing when to overturn, and then you are not using VAR, but then you're going back and either suspended a player. For a game, even though it was looked at by the ref and it was looked at by VAR. So it's just such an odd component that MLS in general is looking really bad when it comes to refereeing, VAR, the difference of opinion between Disco and the referees on the game. So it's just a huge mess, man. And I can't help but just to think that next year there better be a huge emphasis on better refereeing, a more standardized use of VAR, and all of the above, because it just has been awful, awful. And this, yes, it changed the game, and you can't doubt that. So it all comes down to just bad implementation of VAR.
All right, so now let's get into the Sporting Kansas City irony that you were talking about initially here, where, and once again, it seems to be item number 2 where we're talking about VAR. We're Sporting Kansas City, and Peter Vermes. Let's see, how should we phrase Peter Vermes's press conference with the colorful and forced language of Peter Vermes discussing his disenchantment with everything that was going on around. Was that a fair assessment of Peter Vermes' postgame?
Hey, you know what? I could not put it better myself. That's actually very eloquent, and I will co-sign that today and tomorrow. That's beautifully put. But it is just a little hypocritical for a coach that has been involved in back-to-back issues, from Christian Roldan being body slammed to the awful tackle on Mabella Reynoso, and now you have the audacity to put that into context. I mean, you got to check yourself, and you got to check your surroundings, and you got to, I don't know, you don't got to check social media, but you got to look around you, man, and realize that perhaps in this one you could have said, hey, you know what, we lost because we were not better. RSL was hard to break down, and they scored a goal, and referee had nothing to do with it. That would have been great, because you've already gotten a freebie on 2 games back to back. So in this one, you could have just been like, all right, well, it happens, but you didn't. You come out looking like a jerk, to be quite honest, regardless of how delightful or colorful he might have tried to put it. I mean, it just makes no sense to me. And at the end of the day, RSL beat them fair and square. RSL was pragmatic, and yes, perhaps they were very conservative, but at the end of the day, it worked. They contained RSL, and in the best way possible, with the team that is the Cinderella of the playoffs. Kralik scoring that goal is just magical in a very MLS type of way. So I love to see it, and I love to see Peter Vermes be on the other side of that coin.
When you look at LAFC, the way that they lose to Colorado, how much of a stunner was that? Not necessarily that Colorado at home, where they've been very, very tough this year, knocked off LAFC, but the manner in which Colorado knocked off LAFC on decision day, that to me was one of the more stunning impacts. Not a stunning result, mind you, because we figured Colorado was a home favorite going in, but the fact that this game was, I mean, Colorado at times was boat racing LAFC, and they go on to win 5-2. When it came to this particular result, how much of a surprise was it for you?
It was a huge surprise. And look, you could talk about LAFC not being in playoff position and not being above the red line, but at the end of the day, it was a team that was on a huge hot streak, that began to find their stride, that understood what they were doing wrong and completely changed it around. Red hot Christian Arango, Cifuentes playing great, Uruguay national team Rodriguez that has been balling. So Colorado, regardless of being the favorite and LAFC coming as the underdog, you could be like, wow, LAFC has everything to win this game, and I did, at least. I thought that they were going to get in the playoffs if they were to, do a little bit more. So it was a huge surprise for me, especially the scoreline, especially the way the game developed. But huge credit to Colorado and what Frazier has done with this team. They were selective on when to attack. They were effective up front. I thought Price played a fantastic game. Kellen Acosta as well, just such a huge leader and a guide, a northern star, or where the team needed to go. He was a compass for this team. They were able to really take on what LAFC was bringing, and they never let down. I mean, Colorado starts winning, but immediately after, LAFC responds right back, and that doesn't phase Colorado at all, right? So I just thought that they did a good job about continuing to keep the foot in the pedal to the metal, and they start off winning. They continue to just build up this game, and considering that they're the team with the lowest salary in all of MLS, with the least amount of DPs, or at least productive DPs, DPs that are worth mentioning. I think they did a fantastic job in this one. I mean, it was just a master class on how to counter, a master class on how to use the width of your team, and how to just stay involved throughout the whole time. Not to mention the fact that the Colorado ran the entire game. I mean, they were so active defensively. They never allowed LAFC to get back in the game. I mean, it was just a great job by Colorado.
How blown up do you see LAFC getting in the offseason?
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
Because Bradley's contract is up. We know this.
And that's the big one.
And that's the big one. And you're thinking, okay, probably to Toronto to be there to coach with his son. That's the easy one. So you figure wherever Michael's going to be, Bob, it's conventional wisdom that he'll be that coach. But how much past that do you see LAFC getting blown up?
Oh, man.
I didn't mean to challenge you with your adult beverage handy.
No. and that is by no means altering my decision making here, but I am going to give you an odd answer right here. I'm going to let you know that I have a feeling that Brad is going to stay.
Really?
And that's yes, and that goes opposite to everything that I've told you throughout the season, and that's opposite to everything that I have even felt myself throughout this regular season. So the reason of it is because I think that there's going to be so many missing pieces here. I think Vela for sure is gone. I think that they're going to have to go look for a not a full-time, because that's a bad word, but for a better goalkeeper. I think that several of those defensive pieces are going to be gone. So because of that, they're going to need some structure. You need some balance. You need some consistency. And that's Bob Bradley. And I said it to you and Jason before. I think that Bob Bradley is going to be LAFC scapegoat in case things still tanking. They need to figure out somebody that they could fire mid season if things just don't pick up. And if they do pick up, then you're looked at as brilliant. You just held on to the process of Bob Bradley, and now it paid off. So I think it's a low risk situation with a high potential, with a high reward. So I have a feeling that Bob will stay, that things will be the same, and a lot of changes will be done to that roster. That's for sure. That roster is going to completely be differently next season, with obviously some pieces that have been working, like Cifuentes, Arango. I expect Brian Rodriguez to be back for one more year, especially after completely failing in Spain. So I don't see him going anywhere. So because of that, I think some of those pieces will stay, and Bob Bradley will continue to be the LAFC head coach.
3 more questions, and thanks for doing this. I know that we're catching you. Oh, what is the movie that you're going to be going into, by the way?
It is the Eternals by Marvel. And my showing is till 2:15, so you are good. I am A-okay over here. I'm like nearby in a location where
you can kind of scout and see what's going on before the Eternals want to start jumping on all the bad guys from Marvel. I see this. Okay.
That's right. Yes, right. Yeah.
All right. So how crazy was the Galaxy Minnesota match for you?
Oh man, that was
flat out bananas at points, man.
No, I mean it was insane. And once again, beyond the scoring line is, what we all kind of were looking at, right? I mean, we all, at least I did, and we talked about it. I got one right, I got one wrong in that one. Our RSL goes in, but the LA Galaxy end up getting out, and Minnesota just slithers their way through the line. But yeah, it was just a crazy game that I believe describes Minnesota to the best of any other game. I mean,
absolute chaos
throughout the whole game. It was just such an odd and at times undeserving win. I mean, I feel bad to say it, but it was almost undeserving the way they tied that game up, and they ended up getting into the playoffs. The only credit that I will give is that they stuck to their guns. They stuck to what they were doing in terms of formation, in terms of the way they approached the games. Fragapane was good, but he wasn't great.
Except for
I
flanking
thought
the PK off the post that could have given him the lead.
that's right, and that's what I wanted to go to. That's what I wanted to go to. You know, he had some really good plays, and then some ones that completely could have given the lead, and that's definitely one of those. Reynoso himself, I didn't think he had a great game, so the fact that they were able to hold off was very interesting for me, and I just think they're going to be the worst team in the playoffs. They have no chance to beat Timbers, in my opinion. Not with the way they played, not with this defensive line, not with how vulnerable they are in the midfield, not with the amount of mistakes that they create. I mean, I just think that they are a farce. They are just a non-factor here in the playoffs.
So then what is the level of concern there in Seattle after the 1-1 draw at BC Place?
Man, there's some concern. There is some concern, especially because the Sounders right now have a lot of players that are nursing injuries that, although are expected to play, I always go to how well they can play and how sustainable their play can be. Nicolas Odero being the one that has had such a difficult time staying healthy. One game in, one game out. He has a swollen knee once again. He's retaining liquids in one of his knees. That could be something that he's going to be dealing with throughout the playoffs. Raul Ruidiaz coming back is fantastic, but he's also a player that came on, got a score, and then was pulled off with the same hamstring injury. So you're hoping that gets better. And these are key components. Mm-hmm. And then we go to the number one MVP candidate, Joe Paulo, and the one that gives your team balance. He gives your team build up from the back line, gives you distribution, gives you defense, and that's Joe Paulo. If he's not 100% for Seattle, this team cannot play to the best of its abilities in any way, both defensively and offensively. And you've seen it. You've tried it all. Rowe and Atencio. You've tried Leyva and Rowe. The one thing you haven't done and that you could do is maybe put Christian Roldan in that spot, but then you're missing him doing that dual function higher up the field. So there's just a lot of question marks when it comes to this team in critical positions. So it is concerning, especially going against RSL team that is the Cinderella, the dark horse, the chip on your shoulder. We have nothing to lose. So Seattle's going to have to come with it. And they're going to have to, from minute 1 to minute 90, finish this game off. You cannot allow RSL to, at any point of the game, quiet down the crowd. You cannot allow them to get ahead in the game. You cannot give them the slightest chance to feel like they can win this game, or you're not going to get out of that hole. So Seattle, at this point in time, has a lot of corrective measures that they have to implement defensively, mentally, and of course, health-wise. So do I believe they're going to win? Absolutely. At home, they're a team that has been here, done that have been able to rotate the roster throughout the whole season and found a way to win. But this is the one win or go home. There is no two-leg. There is not, we'll get that next time. And you're going against the RSL team that's going to be in there to kill and without anything to lose. So Seattle definitely needs to be very careful. Jordan Morris is going to be a key factor in this one as well. I think he's going to give them a little bit of what you could be missing in other positions. I still don't know how healthy Raul Ruidiaz is. I expect he's going to play, but How do they bring him on? Do they bring him on off the bench? Is he going to start and watch his minutes? So I think Jordan's going to play a big role in this one. And yeah, man, it's going to be a good game for sure. I don't think it's going to be an easy game for Seattle by any point of the imagination.
Right now, the juice boxes for Thanksgiving, your favorite Thanksgiving side dishes. Seattle's a -143. We'll get into that more. And then the other playoff games next week. Before we go, I promised I was going to ask about this. With this round of qualifiers now coming up, the next series of matches in a row, what from 30,000 feet are you looking at when it comes to the qualifiers in North America and South America and pretty much anywhere on this planet? What's going on in your mind with this round of qualifiers before we go?
What is on my mind when it comes to the qualifiers?
Yeah, what do you think's going to happen? This is where Niko gets out the crystal ball and starts saying, okay, I think that we got to keep an eye on this. We got to keep an eye on this. Tata Martino's going to be out of a job. Greg Berhalter is going to be the star of stars in this universe. What do you think's going to happen in this round? What do folks from your mind need to keep an eye on for this next batch of games?
Well, let's start in South America because that's where my mind is at. I mean,
there you go.
I have my alarm clock going. I'll be going to a friend's house here at 4:30 to watch what I believe is going to be a great game between Brazil and Colombia. So I think that in terms of CONMEBOL, you just want to watch who's going to get in immediately and who's going to be having to play that wild playoff game. So in terms of CONMEBOL, can Uruguay be able to push their way in and knock Colombia out? Ecuador, who is currently winning at this point in time, can they continue with that great play and maybe not only get into the playoffs but be a contender in the World Cup? I mean, you could literally see in the next couple of games in Ecuador whether they're going to be a problem in the World Cup, and I think they will be. So that's something to look at. An Ecuador team that's never really been given a lot of props or credit, and that is currently playing some very progressive and exciting soccer, something that was never the case for Ecuador in the past. They were always pragmatic. They had some good players in certain positions, athletic, but this Ecuador team it's going to be a problem. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Argentina is always a team that I feel like they have a lot of talent, but there is no true consistency within them. So how good can they really play? So that's in terms of South America in general. It's going to be a close race to the finish for sure between Uruguay, Colombia, Ecuador. How that's really going to play out at the end, that's going to be interesting. In terms of CONMEBOL, I think you hit it right on. There is no position for a head coach that has the demands in America in general that perhaps the Mexican national team coach has to deal with, because there's so much expectation to be the CONCACAF giant, to dominate, to always crush the little brother of that is the United States for so many media members and so many Mexico fans and the federation in general. They don't see the progress that the United States is currently on. They don't see a golden generation. They see the same Yanks that are still playing PKs running at the goalkeeper, and that's just what they believe the MLS and U.S. soccer still is. So if Tata Martino loses against the United States this week, if Tata Martino has a couple of bad results, he's going to be out of the job, because there is no way that the Mexican Federation is going to allow the United States to have such an upper hand on international tournaments as we just had seen happen, and this qualifiers. I mean, there is simply no way. That is probably the biggest thing, the biggest piece of news that you'll be looking for this week in CONCACAF is how does that U.S.-Mexico game go, and where does Tata Martino land if this does not go his way?
And that is Friday night at TQL in front of a full house in Cincinnati. What's going on with you these days? What is the written word, the spoken word, and all the other words that you are doing these days as one of the busiest men in show business? What do folks need to keep an eye on?
Well, first of all, I do want you guys to go and take a look at my article at Sound Our Heart for Yemer Gomez Andrade. I've gotten a lot of good comments. I'm very proud of it. Yemer has such an interesting story, leaving his country at the age of 15 years old to make his dream come true in Argentina, having to be away from his parents, struggling through getting to the divisions in one of the most respected leagues in South America, in Argentina, not being able to make teams because he was underage, to eating nothing but pasta on a daily basis in a shared space with a bunch of trialists, to becoming an icon in Unión de Santa Fe and a great player. And ironically enough, when everybody was doubting him and judging him for making his leap to MLS, it is through MLS, through the Sounders, that he gets his first call-up to the Colombian national team. So I do want you guys to check it out. It's worth the while. Sandra Hart, Yemer Gomez Andrade. It's a great story. Next week, either Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm gonna be having a roundtable discussion about the playoffs. You know, going into the playoffs, and we'll have some of the best journalists here in Seattle. But I'm also gonna be filtering in at least one representative from each team. Felipe Cardenas is a great friend of ours of the Athletics, so he's going to be coming in and talking about Atlanta. We're going to have from Orlando, from Vancouver. It's just going to be a great show. So I will let you guys know the next time I'm on more about that one, but that's the big one coming up. I love to do a big review, a big pre-playoff show, and that's what I'm basically going to be doing on this one.
Good deal. Niko, it is great to have you on Thursdays, whether it is for your breakfast coffee or your lunch or heading to movies. El Rolo in W in all caps on the Twitters. Niko, my friend, we will catch up with you next week, and we'll get, as we're closer to the playoffs, we'll break it all down. Thanks for hanging out with us once again for a 1v1. We will catch up with you next week, my friend.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you. Love the crowd. Love you guys, man. Have a good one.